In those days, given the age in which people married and had children, 40 years is a long period of time. By the time of the writing of the first gospel, 40 years after Yeshua's death, if someone had met Yeshua, Jesus, this person could have already been a great-grandfather. So it means that many grew up in the faith and had children and grandchildren without ever being a gospel or reading a gospel. It was all oral. This is the process the Gospels is built on. We can use form criticism to analyze the oral traditions that preceded the Gospels. Stories and sayings in the Gospels appear most often in the form of periscopes or isolated units. If we investigate the Gospels, we see that these individual units often appear in different places in the Gospels. And so we can look at them as units that can be moved around. For example, in the so-called Sermon on the Mount, Yeshua or Jesus talks about salt and light. We read, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trodden underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. Nor do men light a lamp and put it under a bushel, for on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." In Luke's Gospel, chapter 11, we have this saying on light. It reads, "No one after lighting the lamp puts it in a cellar or under a bushel, but on a stand, that those who enter may see the light. Your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eye is sound, your whole body is full of light. But when it is not sound, your body is full of darkness. Therefore, be careful lest the light in you be darkness. If then your whole body is full of light, having no part dark, it will be wholly bright, as when a lamp with its rays gives you light." We don't see the saying on salt until 3 chapters later in chapters 14, where it says, "This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and take counsel whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends an embassy and asks terms of peace. So therefore, whoever of you does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltness be restored? It is fit neither for the land nor for the dunghill. Men throw it away. He who has ears to hear, let him hear." Don't forget, salt and light appear together in the book of Matthew. They do not appear together in the book of Luke, as we have just seen. Now look at the Gospel of Mark. "For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltness, how will you season it? Have salt in yourself and be at peace with one another." In the book of Mark, we find the saying on salt in a completely different context, separated from a saying on light, and also not in a sermon on a mount. These are units that can be connected and disconnected and found in certain places, supporting the idea that it was handed down in the form of separate units, unevenly distributed among these early communities. We see Paul quoting Jesus or Yeshua authoritatively with regard to divorce, but in the case of food offered to idols, he does not, supporting the position that these oral traditions were unevenly distributed among these early Christian communities. Let's look at the two scenarios. To the married I give charge, not I, but the Lord, that the wife should not separate from her husband. When Paul was talking about divorce, he said, I have a command from the Lord. In fact, we find such a command on the lips of Jesus or Yeshua, forbidding divorce in Mark's gospel. Notice, however, just a chapter later, Paul takes up the question of whether people can eat meat that has been offered to an idol shrine or not. He goes on for 3 chapters, arguing that yes, under these circumstances, a person can, and no, under these circumstances, a person cannot. Why? He apparently has never heard that Jesus declared from his own lips in the book of Mark that it isn't what goes into a person's mouth that makes them unclean, but what comes out of a person's mouth. It was not written as yet, therefore, Paul did not know of this tradition, confirming that these oral traditions were unevenly distributed among these early Christian communities or these early church communities. One thing that can be pointed out about oral tradition is that there is much more variation in detail than there is in the essential point of the story. We see this in the Gospels as well. When you take, for example, a healing story of Jesus, there's a lot of variations in the who, when, what, where, and kind of thing, and little variations in what is done. For example, take an account of a story about the empty tomb. There's incredible variations on who went to the tomb, what they saw, when they got there, who it was that spoke to them, what they said, and what was the reaction from the 4 Gospels. On all 5 points, there is variations. What's the essential point? The tomb was empty. Look at these 2 healing narratives as examples as well. And when he returned to Capernaum, after some days, it was reported that he was at home, and many were gathered together, so that there was no longer room for them, not even about the door. And he was preaching the word to them. And they came, bringing to him a paralytic carried by 4 men. And when they could not get near him because of the crowd, they removed the roof above him. And when they had made an opening, they let down the pallet on which the paralytic lay. And when Jesus or Yeshua saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "My son, your sins are forgiven." In the book of Mark, we have a paralytic who has to be carried by his friends and lowered through the roof so that Yeshua or Jesus can heal him. In the book of John, we have another paralytic. We read, "After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Yeshua went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which has 5 porches. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Yeshua or Jesus saw him and knew that he had been laying there a long time, he said to him, 'Do you want to be healed?' The sick man answered him, 'Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is troubled, and while I am going, another steps down before me.' Jesus said to him, 'Rise, take your pallet and walk.' And at once the man was healed, and he took up his pallet and walked. Now that day was the Shabbat." Here in the book of John, we have a paralytic who has been lying by the side of a pool and doesn't have anyone to carry him into the healing waters. These 2 narratives might at heart be the same story. The details of who, when, what, and where are incidental. The point is Yeshua or Jesus healed the paralytic. There seems to be much more consistency on the essential points than on the circumstances. Over a 40-year period, the memory of Yeshua was in all likelihood handed down through oral transmission in communities in the form of short units, as we have just demonstrated.